Composite Gloves here, and this is another video in the FL12 Basics tutorial series. And today we're going to be talking about the Fruity Love filter. This is a part 3. We're going to be talking about the WaveShaper. So by default, it is off. Let me go to a default menu here. So here it is. It is off. A quick note about the previous tutorial I did not mention because you saw me dragging up and down to get to all of these. You can right click, but for some reason, they do things like, I've noticed this about Image Line. They do funny things. Well, I'm not sure if this was the plugin designer or if it's Image Line or if it's even the same thing, but they named the solid state, the state variable, chocolate state, lime low pass, lime high pass, vanilla, whole bunch of vanillas, and a mango low pass, which is the low pass with the drive. So I don't know, just funny stuff like that. That's why I like it when companies write. It gives them personality. So we've got this WaveShaper here, and I have a video on my channel all about WaveShaper and exactly what it does. And this is a pretty much exactly the same thing, like almost exactly the same thing. So I recommend just going and watching that video. Just look up WaveShaper. I think it's actually on this playlist. So I explained distortion versus saturation, all these different types of things. My understanding has shifted quite a bit, but it's what I say is still pretty much correct. So we have WaveShaper. You can turn it on, and by default, you should not have this menu. Actually, it'll be like there, and you turn it on, and it will jump to the WaveShaper menu. This is a graph that maps input to gain. So you have, like, right now we've got really low values that come in will be boosted, and I think this is just no, it's on right now. If you do a linear setting, which to do with, I'm going to talk about how to manipulate these graphs when we cover these guys right here. But when you have a linear setting, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. As you can see, this, so softer values, you could push those up a lot harder, and you could take it down, and something would have to get pretty loud. You could think of this as like a meter. They suggested this actually. So picture this as like a meter, and here's your volumes. Imagine my mouse being your levels, and so it's going like dun 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 dun, you know, like that. And as the volumes go up, they meet a new gain structure mapping. So softer volumes, as you can see, are being shoved up like crazy, and this is essentially 0. So we could do something like this and just silence it, and it has to be freaking loud if it even wants to be heard. So as you see, I'm playing it right now, and there's no sound. But as we turn this up, and so the softer stuff will be met with higher volume if you do something like that. So we have extreme control over this. This is called the Spline Graph, the way this is set up. And so at a linear 1-to-1 rate relationship, that this straight line with maximum being related to the minimum. I did that, well, I pointed at them backwards. But the minimum related to the maximum, they are a 1-to-1 relationship. They come out as you would expect to hear normally. So you can manipulate that relationship using the WaveShaper. You have this amp, and so what amp does is you have the amount of, so this sets the amount that's getting sent to the WaveShaper. And you might be saying, why don't they have mix? Well, they do have mix, but mix is a little bit different. So they named this one amp. It'd be like preamp, I think would be kind of useful to have before it. Preamp, that way you know it's happening before it comes in the WaveShaper, because to me, I guess that sort of makes sense. Like, I guess you don't need preamp there, because what else would it do? Like boost what's already being boosted by your volume, by your gain structure mapping and distortion mapping. But anyways, it's called a WaveShaper because you're reshaping your wave. So you can tell it, you could tell these values that are normally only this loud to be this loud instead. And when we see a wave on a graph, we're visualizing it through the, as you can see here, the amplitude. So you're literally restructuring this wave into something else, usually some sort of a square wave or something. But you could make things be quiet. And so hopefully you have an idea of what you're touching here. The other video I talk about that. So anyways, this is the volume that's going into the WaveShaper. Then you have the mix, so you can mix this with your wet or dry. So this means that this has a separate output, and these are combined at the exit of this module, and then they get sent to your next module if you use the next knob or not, depending on your routing. And so the mix is just, let's make this like obnoxious with the mix over here. so you can mix between the original and so you can see that is an option. These things are automatable. You create automation clips. Now you have this plus option. So this is unipolar mode. So this is at 0. This is at 0. When you go into bipolar mode, this middle one is now 0. And I've been reading a lot of stuff about C++ because I'm trying to program my own plugins. So I've got a few books on the subject, and there's a lot of math to learn. And what's cool about this, and now I can say how it works, but I can't. I need like a whiteboard or something. But you have this middle value, and this is the knowledge. What this is this is now 0 dB, and this is where your sample value is. So the way a plugin generally works is you send it into like your code, and it takes each value, and there's like a particular rate you have to accomplish this in. That way it can come out as regular audio on the other side. And because it's digital, it can actually look ahead and perform calculations before it like even reaches this. You normally have like look ahead options in compressors because they do change the way your processing can occur. But this 0 value, it knows the amplitude of your sample already. Like it already knows what your amplitude is. And so it'll say, oh, I know if the amplitude is +1 or if it's -1 or if it's like positive 0.707 or negative 0.707 or, you know, whatever it is. And so this one will only manipulate the positive values. So it's kind of cool. And this one will only manipulate the negative values. And so you can have extreme control. This is like extra extreme control. Now you will notice, oh, it's not happening right now. When you use the WaveShaper, this tends to cause your a click to happen because this is essentially recentering when you shift values unnaturally like this, it's called DC offset. And so this is covered in the other video, but as you can see, we can do something weird like this where it only comes out the positive end. Now, this is a useful tool as far as a filter. This is a really interesting tool. As you can see, just like bizarre things are possible, and you could combine it with other inputs and outputs. And so the love filter in this regard is extraordinarily powerful, like the fact that this is in here. But this is called DC offset again, and it can eat up your headroom, so you got to be careful. So from a mixing perspective, this is very not desirable. And usually this thing, so it's got a center knob. So as we play notes, see how it's really off. But let's say we want that shape, but we want it to be centered. So what it'll do is it'll take all our samples, and this happens after the wave shaping, so it does take a sec to occur, but it'll take all our samples, recalculate the average, and make 0 the average again. Essentially what this is 0 is no longer the average. So this could be bad from a mixing perspective because you've got things that are unnaturally pushing your speaker cone forwards. This is essentially saying speaker go to middle, then go up, then go middle, never go back down. So it's called DC because the DC wave only goes up. It doesn't go down. AC goes up and down. And a speaker is built for an AC wave. It's not good to have your speaker, like an extreme DC wave can just junk up your speakers. So just so you know, that's what this center does. It centers it for you. It's better for your speakers, but you're not doing anything nuts right here, so you'll be fine. But just so you know, that is a thing that happens. And so when you distort, the oversampling actually may come into play here, especially with high pass. But we'll talk about oversampling later. But that is the WaveShaper. That is what it does. That is the way you can use it. So yeah, so this is obviously AC. So you don't really need the center. You see, center actually introduces, if you do the center, this is around 0. But as you can see, we have a higher peak value here than here because of the way we've set up our distortion mapping. So if you hit center, it'll actually move it off. So it could come in handy with the distortion. That's why it's included with it. So yeah. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Anything you want to know about this. Let's create a sound real fast. I haven't done that. Let's play our melody and let's make something crazy using our, because now we've covered quite a bit. So we'll wave shape it first and we will route it. We're going to turn this off, send it into the next filter, which you should be familiar with from previous tutorials. And we're going to make it a 1. And then we're going to come in here and we're going to make this a low pass too. We're going to turn it on. We're going to turn the input volume off, and we're going to leave the output volume on. We're going to leave the WaveShaper off. And I haven't talked about these, so I will not use those. And I haven't talked about this yet, so I won't use that either. So this is pretty simple. And I'm just going to automate my resonance and my cutoff and see what I can make. So let's come over here to Love Filter, create automation clip, create automation clip. With envelopes, we also have some interesting options. So let's do something like this, and we'll bring it up as we go. And let's have something like a triple bang, bang, bang right here, or a quadruple, because what the heck, let's get crazy. And we'll start off with a lot of resonance. Oh no, we'll have our resonance peak up here. That'll be obnoxious though, because then you'll have this boost and it'll reach a really high value. So just so you know, when you do something like this, like I could see it because I've had it happen to me so many times. But if I were to like do this, my ears would just be like, ah, because that'd be so much high content that's getting spiked. It'd be like this, wow, 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 like thing. And it's just not desirable. So you want to be careful about your resonance. Usually when this happens, I usually have an EQ with a substantial high cut, because I like the texture that the resonance introduces, but I don't like the way it's going on. And so I'll cut it with the EQ. Some people might say, why don't you just boost with the EQ right there and have no resonance? And it is not the same. They're different processing algorithms. They produce different outcomes, and sometimes I want the resonance instead. So let's play this. And I am not getting sound out of my thing, which means I have set up my routing funky. It's going into the next. I've turned it on. That's on. Let's turn this off. And oh, I know what's going on. So our WaveShaper's on. That was our principal problem first. See, this is once you know how things work, you can troubleshoot so much easier. So we've got our WaveShaper on, and as you can see, the volume mapping right here is 0. So we want this to be up, and we don't want it to be that distorted, but we want some distortion because we're using a WaveShaper. And as you can see, this filter is affecting our sound. And let's say like for this sound, I don't want the filter to come into roll, but this is another thing that's kind of annoying, is there is no filter. There's no way to just turn this off. So what do? Oh yeah, there is. There's an off button right there. You can turn it off. I don't know what I was talking about. Makes perfect sense. That I just had a senior moment. Okay, so now only the WaveShaper from the first order is going through, and the second order is doing our filtering. Let's do something like this. Just get creative. Let's turn the resonance up right here. Maybe the resonance won't be that bad. I don't know. Sometimes you just never know. I see the fact that we're using a low pass helps here. I don't know. Maybe that whole rant at the beginning, but resonance is often a culprit of just horrible, horrible things. Other times if it's a really sharp, so your ear perceives volume. If you can hear outrageous, much louder things for very short amount of time, and you can't perceive the volume. Our ear hears volume based off of duration. And so if a sound is longer, but it's softer than another sound that's like much louder, but it's much shorter, the longer sound will actually sound louder. That's why brass instruments can get so obnoxiously loud versus transients don't get as loud. What happens is instead of sounding louder, we start to hear a different character to the sound. It's this weird phenomena. And so movements like this, they could be louder, but even though they're louder, it changes the character of the sound rather than the perceived loudness of the sound. So that's something that, if you don't know, that's the thing. So that's pretty cool. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Subscribe because you are a blessed individual, and have a blessed day.